On this week's episode, we talk about disclosing our disabilities.
Yes, we discuss disclosing in the workplace, in life, and in many other situations.
So stick around.
Hello and welcome to Rare with Flair,
the podcast where two 20-somethings with the same rare disease are living their best lives. I'm your host, Cassandra.
And I'm your host, Casey.
Here we are. It's springtime.
It is. I think the weather might finally be warm and stay warm. I'm crossing my fingers as I say this sentence.
Yeah,
I'm hoping.
I feel it. I know. This weekend's supposed to be super nice.
Yes. Did you have a good Easter?
I did. So, ooh, girl, I'm so excited because my parents came and visited, and then we got lunch, and then I went plant shopping, girl. I got so many plants.
Yes, my dad is incessantly bothering me about when are we plant shopping because I'm going to go plant shopping with him, and he's not actually bothering me. I want to go, but I just happen to be busy. But I am excited for plant shopping too. And how many plants did you buy? A lot of plants?
I bought at least 6.
Oh, wonderful. That's exactly what I want to hear. Music to my ears.
I know. Well, and I started the great, what I'm calling the great repotting, because I try not to transplant my plants too often because it will bother them, right? Like,
yeah.
You know, it's like moving houses. Like, no one wants to do it that often.
Yes.
Are you good?
I'm good. I have a bruise. I got blood. This is actually a rare related. I got blood taken the other day, and I have a ginormous bruise on my arm, and it hurts.
Girl.
And I just looked at it a funny way, and she was we're on FaceTime. She can see me, so she was like, "Are you good?" Because I'm talking about plants, and you're looking at your arm in a weird way. I'm sorry.
I was like, did you hurt yourself? Okay.
It hurts. It hurts.
Put ice on it, baby.
Though. I'm listening, though. I'm not distracted.
No,
I'm listening.
You're fine.
The great plant
repotting.
Yes, the great repotting.
Basically, like, I'm trying to move them if they've outgrown their containers in like the past year. And I've had this planter by my fireplace that if anyone has visited my home in the past year has seen it sitting there. It's like a stilted, it's on little wooden stilts. And finally, my snake plant that I bought a year ago was big enough, and it has a home now.
Oh, that's amazing. So happy. If anybody's been following us on the Insta, which if you're not following us on Instagram, you definitely should, rare.with.flair. We have been doing this new little Instagram segment, which is like a bi-weekly life update thing. And it's kind of like what we do at the beginning of the podcast, but we share pictures. So like normally anytime we talk about things on the beginning of this podcast, if you go to Instagram, you can see the pictures of what we were doing. But I wanted to talk that I went to this like Van Gogh exhibit with my dad, and I'm sure a lot of people have seen it. It travels. So I think it came to you, right, Cass?
It was close to like where I work, actually. Yeah. I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, it was awesome. I really recommend it to anyone low vision because it was so big. Basically, all of Van Gogh's paintings are like projected huge on these walls in this room, and there are like also like pillars that they're projected onto, and so you can really see it. Like it's so up my alley. Like I love cool different stuff like that. I love museums. I love art. I went with my dad, and he does too, and so we both really loved it.
That's so much fun.
Yeah, I think for low vision people, it's really a fun experience. It's very colorful, and you can see it. I mean, not to speak for everyone, but I could see it. Right. And I feel like when you go to like an art museum, you can't see the art. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Was there anything left to read?
So yeah, like the beginning, before you got into the big room with all the projections, the beginning had these big like plaques. They were huge, like probably, 10 feet tall, and they had light inside them, and they had like quotes from Van Gogh and like little snippets about his life. And actually, if I got really close to them, I was even able to read them because they were huge. Yeah, and that's another thing that's I mean, I've never been able to read anything at a museum.
I know.
In my life.
And if I do, it just takes way too long. Like, ugh.
Yeah. And so it was. I'm not saying it was like easy. It's never easy for us to read things, but I was able to take my time and get up close. And I mean, it was very, very big, and it was on a screen, so it wasn't like reading a plaque. Like that's harder. I feel like.
Yeah, for sure. That's so cool.
Yeah. Did you do anything else exciting you want to touch on?
I went shopping with my mom and one of my friends. That was really fun. We mostly like ran errands, but running errands with my mom is really fun.
Yes, no, totally. And that's the pictures we shared on Insta. One of your pictures from that day. So
yes,
you looked really cute and it looked really fun.
Girl, thanks. You looked adorable at the museum. Did you do anything else for Easter?
I went to my grandma's house in Mississippi, and I baked cookies.
What kind?
Chocolate chip, basic.
Yum. Can't go wrong.
Yes. And I made them vegan because my nephew can't eat dairy, so I had to be a little creative, but it was fun.
But I bet they looked really good.
They were good. My stomach hurts. It's fine. I am not doing Lent anymore, and I am eating lots of Reese's eggs.
Oh, yeah.
And my stomach hates me for it, but my mouth and taste buds love it.
I'm happy for you, but also slightly sad for your body.
I'm very sad for my body. My stomach is upset. But anyway.
Today, we are going to talk about disclosing disability. And I think when people usually hear disclosing disability, usually they're thinking about doing it in the workplace.
Yeah.
Because, you're not required or even like no one expects you to disclose your disability. So, when you're like searching for a new job and when you're in an interview, like they can't ask you about it. You don't need to tell anybody. But, it's always a discussion in the disability community because, at what point do you need to ask for help? And at what point do you sacrifice whatever privacy you want to have about your conditions?
Absolutely. And in this episode, we're not only going to touch on the workplace aspect of disclosing, but in life too, with friendships, with dating, with everything. And I know like in past episodes we might have slightly touched on this, but not really fully. So I think this is a good topic, and this is such a topic that people in the disability space, like you said, want to talk about a lot. Like it's important. And so
and like we always say, these are our own opinions and our own experiences. Obviously, like, everyone is welcome to do whatever they see fit for their individual situation. But, we try to balance, talking about it ad nauseum and then, being able to, like, express to people that we need help.
Yes, it's hard. It's a hard balance, y'all.
It's so hard.
Let's start, though, with workplace. Let's start. So, like Cassandra said, when you are interviewing, if you don't know this, I will explain what I know, and I hope it's right. When you're interviewing for a job position, you do not have to disclose your disability. It is not required. It is not something you have to do, according to the Americans with Disabilities Act. If you need accommodations, you may disclose after you get the job. But also some people decide to disclose during the interview process because they just would rather get it out of the way. And that is completely up to you. You don't have to, but it's also it's not illegal to disclose it if you want to either. Like that is up to you.
Right. And like they cannot, if you do disclose or when you do disclose, they cannot use that as a basis to prevent you from getting the job. That being said, that's a little bit hard. It's hard to prove discrimination because you can't assume intentions unless something is, written down, which is unfortunate. But, technically they're not supposed to use that to prevent you from getting a job. But if you've heard our jobs episode, you know that can still happen. So
they can make up another reason to not hire you, even if that is their reason. But they're not supposed to. But also, if you get the job and then you disclose, they can't discriminate you for that either. Like that's legal to do. But Cass, what's been your experience? Have you always done it the same way with every job? Have you done it differently? What do you do?
I think it really, really, really depends. So, I've been at the same firm for almost 3 years now. But when I was in undergrad interviewing for different potential jobs and internships, sometimes I would interview over the phone. And in that case, I didn't disclose unless it came up naturally. And what I mean by that is, in undergrad, I studied computer science, but I was trying to see if I could find a way to have a job in the accessibility space. And that's not necessarily something they talk about in school. It's more like if professionally you've had experiences with it, it's like a whole thing. But trust me when I say that it's not that common. And so sometimes when I would bring it up as something that I was passionate about, people would ask, like, how did you stumble into that space? And I'm like, well, I'm legally blind. And, growing up, I had to learn how to use technology, blah, blah, blah. So that's when I would normally do it. Sometimes when I would interview in person, it was more apparent because I would have my guide dog. But even then, people didn't always know. Sometimes they see someone who looks sort of able-bodied with a service dog, and they don't always assume that the person is blind, even though her harness handle in pretty large font says guide dogs for the blind, but I guess that's on them. But because of the nature of my job, basically, I would mention it more as part of, the nature of my job, and not necessarily I'm giving you a heads up, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. I'm one of those people where, like, I have always disclosed it in the interview, which I know is controversial. And like I said, you do not have to do that. And a lot of people don't do that. I just kind of usually get it out of the way. I usually say, like, hey, I'm visually impaired. It shouldn't be a problem, depending on what job it is that I'm going for. But I might say, I might need some accommodations if I get this job or whatever. Or I don't need. One time I remember saying, like, I know you might notice my eyes are moving, because, like, I don't know, our disability is, like, somewhat hidden, but also, like, our eyes do move, and also we might be using a cane or a guide dog, so, like, it's not always hidden, like, completely. People might be able to tell there's something a little different with our eyes or something. So it's funny, though, the current position I'm in, the current job I have right now is, like, in the disability space. And it's been, like, incredible to not have to, like, for everyone to understand my vision and know that I'm blind, and, like, not even, like, have to explain anything or, like, ask for anything. Like, they just know. It's so nice to be
That's awesome, yeah.
in a space like that. It is, like, so freeing. So
yeah, I feel similarly, because I have a couple blind colleagues who can see less than I can, as also in accessibility. And so, like, very cool. And, sometimes it does really come in handy when we are trying to talk about people with disabilities. Obviously, like, we can't project our experiences as, like, what everyone else would experience, but it is, I don't know, it is nice to know that, obviously, like, we're trying to be compassionate to people with disabilities. So, like, being disabled in this role is not a major thing.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great that you have some blind people you work with too, so it doesn't feel like you're the only one in the world that nobody understands,
Right.
Like, I think that's nice to have that. But yeah, like, this is a discussion that comes up all the time, and it's really, at the end of the day, it's up to you. And, you do sometimes have to be careful with disclosing early in case they could discriminate against you. I've never really, I had like that one issue I talked about in the job episode, but I've really never had an issue with it other than that. And I think if you're competent and confident and all of the rest, hopefully things will go well, but not always. It's hard.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Hard
well, and sometimes I would use it in a sense of, like, sometimes they'll ask the question, like, talk about a challenge that you've had to overcome and whatever. And so, I don't know, sometimes, like, vision will come up as part of workplace issues. Not that it causes problems, but it's like, hey, I had to do this challenging thing and I was legally blind, so I used this opportunity to advocate for myself to show that, like, I am able and capable of doing that on my own.
Yes.
So, you know, you can always find a way to frame it that is okay, or you could just come right out and say it like Case just said.
It shows perseverance.
Oh,
but,
sure.
No, but I think well, a few things I'm going to say really quick. I think my advice is to be super confident when you talk about it, and don't be like, I'm sorry, I hope it doesn't get in the way, or, you know, whatever. Like, just be really confident. Be like, I can do the job. Because hopefully if you're applying for the job, you think that you're capable of doing said job with proper accommodations. But, and then also, like, there might be a situation where the specific job, your vision doesn't really come into play much, or it doesn't affect it much, where you might not have to disclose it at all. Like, if you know that you're not going to need accommodations, you might not have to disclose at all. I don't think I've ever been in a job where I haven't needed slight accommodations. So, like, I've always had to disclose.
I think my personal, again, to reiterate, my personal stance is that I think it's much easier to disclose early than later, because I think people have a harder time believing you later on when you've kind of made yourself out to be someone that can get the job done, and then they're like, oh, why didn't you say this sooner? That's usually the first thing that they ask. And you don't want to be in a situation, I mean, I don't want to be in a situation, I'll speak for myself, that I have to retract, you know, past actions in order to, like, make sense in the current context. So, you know.
No, that's so true. Yeah. I've heard of that happening to people where they'll be doing the job just fine, and then their boss will try to add on a new thing that they can't do without accommodations, and then they're like, wait, I need an accommodation, and it is kind of awkwardly too late at that point to do that.
It's hard. But speaking of disclosing in the workplace, as far as medical issues go, I only bring those up if it's going to cause some sort of a thing. So I have like very like vague terms kind of talked about some of my medical issues to my superiors, because it's like, it's come up before where I'm like, I have to be gone for doctor's appointments. Like last October, I was gone for almost a whole week while I was at the NIH being part of history, of a natural history research for Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome. And so, like, I told my supervisors, like, I'm not actually going on vacation. I am going to be part of research, and here's why. But, you know, in general, if it's a good workplace, they will respect your privacy and they'll understand. And, you know, they should not ask you any more questions about your medical history, because they kind of can't, but still.
Yeah, when I've done theater, oftentimes, whether it's been professional or for fun, they'll ask, you know, is there any medical thing we should know about or whatever? And usually I'll talk about my bleeding disorder, because, you know, theater is dangerous, actually. Like, literally, there's, like, constantly, like, sets and things. I was in a show recently where I flew. Like,
so cool.
Like, up in the rafters of the theater. So, like, people need to know if you get hurt that you're gonna bleed. Like,
right.
That's important. But yeah, no, I definitely, that's another thing that comes into play is, like, health. Like, are you gonna be at the doctor more often than a normal person? Yes, probably.
Yes.
So
the answer is yes.
I'm always having doctor's appointments, like, all the time. So yeah, no, I definitely think, like, we could go on and on about workplace. I think it's complicated, and it depends on the job and it depends on the person, but just do what you feel is right. And I really do think it will be okay. There are so many successful low vision people, but also there is like a you know, problem in the blind community with workplace discrimination and getting hired, and it is an issue. Like what's the word? I can't even think of the word. Like, not hiring, but like
retention.
No, I can't think of it. No, I like.
There's a really high rate of unemployment.
Unemployment, that's the word.
Okay.
Unemployment.
I got you, girl.
Unemployment. Yes, there is a high rate of unemployment. And hopefully,
I think it's something like 90%, which is
that's
like
horrible.
absurd. It's absurd.
That is absurd. That is absurd because blind people actually, I read a study and I don't know where it's from. I'm sorry. But I read a study that actually blind people tend to do better at jobs than people without, or just disabled people in general, tend to do better at a job because we feel as though we have to prove ourselves.
Yes.
And so we do like much, much more work because we have to prove that they didn't make a mistake by hiring us.
Right.
And so if you ever want to hire a disabled person, if you're a boss out there, you're making a good choice, I think. Because
yeah, we're gonna work really hard to show that we have the skills that it takes to compete with able-bodied folks.
And it's unfortunate that we have to do that we feel as though
we
have
should
to
not
prove
have
ourselves.
to, but I guess if it makes us work harder, maybe that's good.
Yeah. So our next little segment here is dating. We did a dating episode, if you haven't heard it, about almost exactly a year ago. Well, last February. And if you have not heard it, we talked a little bit on that episode about disclosing to partners, but it's been over a year since we did. So,
yeah.
What do you have thoughts? Should I go first? You go first? What do you think?
I think that also just highly depends on like the circumstances around you meeting someone and then going on a date. Because I've been on dates with people that I've already known, and so like they've seen me in environments. So it's not like a surprise to them that I am legally blind because they probably, they've seen me with my guide dog and stuff like that. So, I think usually the first couple dates is sort of like, hey, this is how I actually see it, just trying to explain it to them so that they understand and they're on your level. Because it can be really confusing. We spend a lot of this podcast talking about how, like, trying to explain how we see and navigate life. So trying to then explain it to someone that you're trying to date is also, like, can be tricky and feel time consuming. But, yeah, I don't know. What about you? What do you have to say?
Well, I feel like it's similar to the workplace thing where, as a general rule of thumb, I think sooner rather than later is better. I think, like Cassandra said, when you already know somebody, it's a little different. But if you're doing online dating, I think I don't put it in my profile, which is a whole other conversation. I'm not saying whether you should or you shouldn't. I just personally do not.
We also got into that.
Yeah, we get into that in the dating one if you want to hear more of my reasoning for that. But I always disclose before I meet them. I just let it randomly come up in conversation, and honestly it always does, because every single thing, every careerish thing I'm pursuing right now has to do with that. So like it's gonna come up, and for me at least, I know for everyone it might be different the way it comes up, but I just go ahead and tell them before we meet. They're gonna probably notice my nystagmus. I've had my cane on dates before. I'd rather them know beforehand, but some people might not. But I still think even if you're gonna wait until you meet them, I think you should tell them on the first or second date, probably, because if you wait too long, it looks like you're hiding something. Like I feel like if you don't make it a big deal, then it won't be a big deal. But just go ahead and tell them. And as far as what you were saying though, Cassandra, that's a whole other thing of when you're first getting to know somebody, like how much they understand how you see and how much you should like bring it up. I feel like that's a whole other. And I don't know, I've had like I'm like comparing it to like one of my best friends. I've known her for over 10 years, and I feel like at this point she like really knows how I see. And I feel like it did take a long time, but I wasn't like rushing that process of trying to explain it. I feel like with dating it might be a little different, but it's important to me that the person I'm dating understands, but I also think it has to come with time. It can't be rushed.
I always say that there are like 2 points in any relationship, whether it's like a dating relationship or even a friendship. There's a point at which you explain what you can see. Like usually they will end up asking, what can you see or how do you see? And so we kind of have, we have an entire episode about that, but like we have like a a little script that we run through pretty much
Yes.
where we explain it in a way that we hope people understand, because like we say, we've never seen any other way, so this is what we know how to do. But there's also the point at which they by observing you see your limits.
Yes.
And so I feel like the second one is almost more powerful, but it makes sense in the context of the first one, because they are aware of it in their head, but then they see it and they're like, okay, I understand what they were telling me now.
Yes. Well, actions speak louder than words. Like, you can try to explain it in words, but really when they see you living, although I think we live in such a way that it looks like we see way better than we can anyway.
No, it's that moment where we miss something.
Yeah,
it's bright out and we don't see them, or it's just that's the moment that I'm thinking of. That you try to read something and it's not correct. You put your phone up to your face, like that's when they know.
I can think of so many moments recently where I've been with like some of my best friends, and those moments have happened where people have like waved at me and they've been like, Casey, someone's waving at you.
Such
like,
a mood.
No, you're right. That's why we have a zero tolerance policy for like pretending we can see things when we can't see them, because it's just doing a disservice to everyone involved, like to us and to our relationships.
Absolutely.
But yeah,
do we want to talk about health stuff and dating?
Health stuff and dating. Yeah, we touched on this a little bit in the other episode too. I feel like I disclosed the vision before the health stuff. And the health stuff, it kind of comes up in conversation. Even kind of when talking about the pandemic, I might say something like, oh, well, I had to be a little more careful, like, because blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's going to come up, and I don't know. How do you feel about that, though? Like, kind of similar?
So I feel like I have like different layers to it. There's like the hey, I've got an ostomy and I haven't had a colon for almost 7 years, and then there's the other like HPS deeper stuff related to it. And so I feel like I try to do it in a staggered way, where like I'll start by like when I mention when I mention my ostomy, I'll try to do it in like a joke. And I know that if they don't linger on it and if they roll with it, then I'm like, okay, so they're probably like not afraid of the idea of it, or they're just ignoring me. And then
I didn't hear what you said.
I said
one time I disclosed my vision to someone and they literally didn't hear it, and I thought they were just like really being cool about it and rolling with it, and then later it came up again and they were like, I didn't know that. Yeah. I was like, no, I told you that. And they were like, no, you didn't. Yeah. Anyway.
Or they didn't understand. And then like
yes.
There's generally a point where I like talk more directly about it, where I'm like, hey, this is what's happened to me and this is kind of my life, right? And then, like, if I'm actually ready to actively date someone, I kind of disclose, like, hey, here are all my cards on the table, because, like, if you want to actively date, like, you should know this about me. But, at that point, you hopefully know the other person well enough that you, like, I don't know, you would know if it was going to freak them out, but nonetheless, like, I just actively, deeply want to avoid I wish I knew about this sooner.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, like, you do have a little more health stuff to disclose than I do, to be fair. But, like, it's doable, and I think you have learned through living your life, like, what an appropriate time to do that is. And, yeah, I think avoiding, I wish I would have known this sooner with anything is good to do. We're not saying you have to disclose everything on the first date, but once you're moving along with someone, it's important to at least get those bigger things out of the way and just say, this is who I am. If you can't take it, you can't take it. And honestly, it kind of weeds out the people who you don't want to be with anyway, because
I always called it, I don't know if does this make this podcast not clean anymore, my douchebag filter?
No, that's fine.
Okay, cool. This is a family-friendly podcast.
It's a family, that's fine. We'll let it slide.
Okay.
No, but it filters people out. I have never had someone have an issue with my vision.
Yeah.
And if they have, they just haven't told me, which is nice because that would probably like really upset me if they said to my face,
I know, right?
like, I hate that.
I don't think I can do this.
Yeah, I'd be like, oh, I'd be like, that's fine if you can't, but just don't tell me. Like, just don't tell me that reasoning. I don't like it.
Oh my gosh. But obviously, like, just like workplace, like, it's totally up to the individual, and you gotta, like, suss out the situation, too. You're like, okay,
Yeah,
I think this might be an appropriate time to do this, because you can even try and plan it out in advance, and you're like, you know what? This seems appropriate now.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what's so funny? I was on a dating app recently, and it was, like, one of the prompt questions was, like, 3 things I couldn't live without. And a lot of people will say, like, God, my friends, my family, oxygen, whatever. And this person...
That's stupid.
This person recently said, my eyesight. And I was like... I literally, like, had to swipe away because I was like, I don't think you'd understand.
Spits out water.
But I'm like, I'm dying that, like, out of the 3 things in your life you can't live without, they, like, said that.
Thanks.
I was like, oh, no.
Appreciated.
It's not my vibe. Not my vibe.
That's an easy way to say, nah, this one's not for me.
Okay, so friends. I mean, disclosing to friends. It's similar to dating, but, like, not.
Oh, yeah. It's really not, but...
But, like, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah?
You can hold out on more of the serious stuff with friends as you're getting to know people because, like... until you start getting on, like, that deeper level, it's not as relevant. But, like, my vision comes up quick because I have a guide dog.
Comes up quick. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I purposely don't mention the name of the place I work on this podcast because I'm private. But if I, like, tell people, I feel like the first question in the whole world that anybody asks is, what do you do? What do you do? And I can't explain my job without saying that I'm blind, kind of. Trust me, I've tried to find a way because I kind of hate having to disclose my entire life after they ask me the very first question, like, hey, nice to meet you. What do you do? So that's been kind of weird. Like, I love my job, but that is the one aspect I really am not loving is, like, that it kind of, like, it's so tied to my diagnosis and that I have to, like, tell people immediately. But yeah, as far as making friends, I feel like it does come up pretty fast, and it's not really as serious as dating because, you know, but yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, I had made some, like, really good new friends last year, and I held out on talking about any serious, like, medical stuff for, like, at least 3 to 4 months because it never came up.
Yeah.
And,
no.
you know, you really don't need to tell people unless it's relevant. Actually, this is a really funny story. So I went to Gatlinburg with this group of friends last like September, October, I don't even remember when, but I was like, oh, we're all, like, staying in an Airbnb cabin together and they don't know about my ostomy. So and I've known these people for a bit, so then I was like, okay, you know what, I feel confident doing this, I should let them know. So I just walked downstairs and I'm like, hello, I have an announcement. I don't have a colon and I poop in a bag, and it was only relevant because, like, I dispose of them, like, in a safe way, but, like, in the trash. And so, like, if they saw it, like, I use, like, you know, doggy poop bags. If they saw that, they would be like, what is this in the trash?
Yeah.
So I just had to explain, like, hey, you might see this in the trash. I take care of it. It's out of the way. It's not a big deal. But, like, yep, that's it. That's me. And I just, like, kind of, like, pulled down part of, like, my waistline so that they could, like, see the bag. And I'm like, any questions?
Aw. Yeah. Like, and I don't think anyone really would mind that at all.
Nah,
like,
of course
there might be some jerks in the world, but who needs them?
Well, I mean, I've had people that be really rude about it, actually.
Yeah,
and past roommates. But, you know, that's those are, again, the douchebag filter. That's how you know you don't want those people in your life.
Well, also, like, these were your friends that you trusted and already really liked. So, like, I think you could tell that it was going to be fine, you know?
Right.
Probably,
it was more of just, like, it wasn't as much as, like, I want to see how they react. It's more of just, like, hey, I actually kind of need them to know because otherwise they'll be confused.
Yeah. No, I don't really get into, like, Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome with new friends.
No.
I mean, really, unless it comes up and they ask, or like, I feel like the way it would come up would be like, oh, I'm going to a conference this year. Oh, for what? Well, I have this rare disease. Or like, you know, they find the podcast.
Well,
it's kind of like we talk about it openly on the internet. But yeah, like, I don't know. It kind of comes up if it comes up. Or if they just ask more about my vision impairment, like how does, you know, oh, well, I have this rare disease and it kind of affects multiple things. So yeah, like, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, but and again, it does not come up all that often, really. Like,
no, the vision comes up a lot more.
Right, because it affects the way you interact with people sometimes, and like, you know, we do our best. We know how to like read the room, and we know how to perceive people in a way, but it is like always a little bit limited just because like we aren't going to notice as much body language or facial expression as like the average sighted person. So like if you know, there are times when I feel like I wish there's information that I wish I could glean. So like it helps to know that, you know, you may not always pick up on the signals and people might just need to be more like direct or a little more obvious with you. Even just like going in for a hug, like sometimes that just gets weird and I forget.
Yes.
I can't tell.
Well, it goes back to the fact that our visual impairment directly affects our social life and social cues. Mm-hmm. Whereas like a stomach thing or a bleeding thing or whatever has really not much to do with our social life or our making of friends. But the vision thing, like,
unless you're like actively like sick or actively going through like a flare up.
Oh, sure.
Then,
absolutely.
You know, you may need to explain that just because it's like, oh, this is why they've gone so much. But normally, it doesn't come up.
Yeah, normally the vision is going to affect your ability to, like, if people are thinking you're rude or whatever, more so. So, yeah.
But outside of relationships, let's talk about being in the great beyond, so to speak, in public.
In public. Oh,
what do you do when you need help?
Oh, gosh. I feel like ever since the pandemic, this has gotten 50 times worse with
so much worse.
With plexiglass and signs and temperature check-ins and stickers on the ground and all this crap we cannot, and I don't call it crap in a rude way. I think it was there for a purpose, but all this stuff that we can't see, like we can't see it. And I feel like we always say people either think we're rude, we're aloof, we're stupid when we're in public. And I've gotten to the point, I really have a zero tolerance policy with that. I'm just like, I can't see. Like I will say it. Listen, I can't see. Please help me. I feel like as a kid or when I was younger, I would have never really done that. And now I just have no shame. I'll say it. I will say so many times at the doctor, they'll turn their computer screen to like get me to like read something. And I just say it. I'm like, I can't see. Like, listen, I can't see. So, you know, it gets frustrating. I know. Having to do that a lot.
But it gets results usually.
It does get results, man. That's what I've learned. And nobody cares, you know?
People are like, oh, okay, cool. You know.
Or if like, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if it's an awkward moment that's already passed too, sometimes I'll just still say it. Like, let's pretend I'm at the grocery store and like the cashier is like waving for me to come over and I miss it. When I finally do see it, I'll sometimes say like, oh, I'm sorry about that. I couldn't see you. Like, I'll like even disclose it after the situation is already resolved because.
Right. Because again, we don't want people to think that we're like the queens of the earth.
Yeah.
And like we don't care about the signals that they're giving us. We just cannot see them. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you have any more experiences
with that? Yeah. I find it difficult with like TSA. Like, this always happens. We talked about this on our, like, travel episode last year. Like, I'm just thinking, I like, speaking of people waving you forward, TSA do that all the time.
That's all they do.
The worst. And
That's
they're
all
just
they
like,
do.
motion. And it's like, listen, you took my cane from me, or you see me with my guide dog. I did not magically grow better eyes since you took my cane from me. I need you to tell me to move.
Yes. Oh
it's
my
so
gosh.
bright in the airport too. I'm just like, I don't know what's going on
worst. Here. TSA really is. That is one of the worst. But like, I mean, so doctors' offices, grocery stores,
Post
so many
offices,
places,
coffee shops.
Yes.
It comes up so often, and so and sometimes like, I don't know. Sometimes it makes sense, but. I don't do it with every stranger that I meet in public, obviously. It's only if it's starting to cause an issue, or I think it will cause an issue, like with the plexiglass thing. I'm like, I don't know where the opening is.
Yes.
I'm legally
I never
blind.
can find it. Yes.
Can't they just put tape around the edges so that it like highlights the opening? Because I cannot find it.
I'll be trying to put paperwork at the doctor through it, and I'm like hitting the glass.
Yup, smacking it like...
No, but you make a great point. I don't just announce it every time I go anywhere. Like, I'm not like, I'm blind. Like, I only say it if something like that is happening. I don't just announce it.
We're adults, and we have experienced a lot of just regular adult problems. So, at this point in our lives, we can foresee sometimes when things might cause problems. And again, if they don't, we can react in that moment. And then, like, sometimes it'll come up with my guide dog where, like, people will, be annoying with her, and I will just, like, please, like, tell them kindly, but also pretty firmly, like, please, like, go away, you're distracting her. Like,
yes.
I'm blind. I need to not run into things.
Definitely. And I feel like being an adult is really different than being a child. It's something that's been brand new for me just in the past 5 to 10 years of discovering a life outside of school. I feel like when you're in school, you're in this bubble. And I feel like everybody knows you can't see just automatically. Even if you didn't tell everybody, it just gets around. Like, people just know that you're the blind girl. Like, that's it. That's you. That's who you are. And when you get out of school into the real world and you are doing different jobs or going different places on your own, that is and like making new friends, like not just your school friends you've been with. That is when disclosing becomes such a different ball game, like, in such a different thing.
I feel like in school, and we've had different episodes that have touched so many of the things we're talking about now. In school and in college and undergrad, I would like disclose to my professors at the beginning of each course, and sometimes that was enough. Sometimes I'd need to remind them, like, no, like, I can't see. I need you to do whatever to help me do this better. But usually, again, and actually, I'm in school right now. I'm in a master's program, but like, it's online. So I actually don't disclose in those situations unless it's actively relevant to getting like an assignment done. But like, if they're not going to see you, and if you don't need to be taking notes or sitting in the front of the class or any of the actual accommodations you might need, like, then you don't really need to tell people.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to ask next is, are there situations where you wouldn't disclose? Is there another one besides the online schooling where you just would not disclose? Can you think of any other times?
I will try to avoid it in this is like, it's touching so many episodes, my girl. Like, our passing episode where there are like some highly cited situations that I don't really want them to question my competency.
Yeah.
And if it's not going to cause a danger, then I'm not maybe going to bring it up because I don't want to answer too many questions. And if I believe that I can, like, when I would go to the rock climbing gym, I wouldn't like tell people because I just kind of didn't actually want people to know.
Yeah, no, anytime I've been a member of a gym, I have not disclosed it to any staff or anything there. I'm trying to think, like, there are definitely times where I don't disclose it. I feel like more often than not I do. Like, even like, let's say an example is like if I'm doing theater, like I can do theater just fine. I don't really need to tell them. But it's kind of like we talked about earlier. Oftentimes I will tell them just in case something comes up, and then it's like awkward to bring it up. Like, oh, by the way, I'm blind. It's like I would rather them know in case something does come up. Like, hey, you're going to need to like run down this staircase really fast or something. They might need to know. And like, but I don't know. I agree with you that like sometimes it really depends on the situation, and sometimes it's just not really needed.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time, I'll let people know if it's like a professional situation, you know?
Yeah, I think it usually, like, most of the time, hopefully, it can't hurt to disclose.
Yeah.
So I guess an argument to not disclose, since that's kind of the topic that we're on, is like, in a way, they do get to see you and see you work in a way that they're not constantly asking themselves, like, is she able or capable to do this thing? So, you know, that's something to consider. But I think in my experience, I've found it a little bit, it may be a little annoying to constantly be like, yeah, I got this. Yeah, I'm okay with this. Yeah, I am able to do this independently. Because I'm not asking for help, but people want to be helpful. But I think eventually they will end up getting it, and then they will, like, hopefully start to see your limits and your capabilities, regardless of whether you disclose early or not.
Yeah, I think there are cons to disclosing and there are cons to not disclosing, and you kind of have to choose your battle with that and choose which one you would rather, because I feel like if you don't disclose and you just want to show them that you're capable, they might be thinking, why is she doing it like that, or why is she being rude and ignoring my smile, or why is she holding her phone so close, or so it's like you can't win. And I feel like we say this so often in all of these episodes, is you can't win. Because
well, and you're right too, because I think that as like people who can pass, we like to give ourselves more stock sometimes than we maybe deserve, because we don't know what we're missing. So we think we can do it. But other people might notice other things that are not quite right in their eyes, and then like they have no explanation.
Yes, they might be like, oh, she's a little quirky.
Yeah,
she's a little off.
Something a little off about her. Yeah,
something's a little interesting about her. And one time I like mentioned my vision to someone, and they were like, oh yeah, I noticed your eyes were moving. Like, so like they kind of pick up on it. And I'm like, oh, okay.
You might think you're being super covert, because I sometimes think I'm being super covert, and people are just like, oh. Yeah, I knew that.
Oh my gosh, exactly. And then sometimes you tell them and they're like, what? You can't see?
I'm sorry, I would have never known.
Actually, literally a past coworker, recently my friend was talking to one of my past coworkers about me, and they were like, oh, does she have like a connection to the blind community? And my friend was like, she's literally is blind. So, like, that was literally someone I worked with who never knew. They never knew. So
that's so funny.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So, well, basically.
Ultimately, it's up to you. That's the, that's the entire message of this episode.
It's up to you. We're sorry if we didn't give incredible advice. But we hope just listening to our stories made you feel less alone and, you know, more confident,
as we always do,
in speaking up about who you are.
Yay!
All right. Well, now it's time for a segment we like to call What Are We Into Lately?
We never communicate on what the theme song actually is. We just try to make it up every time.
Who wants to go first? Do you have things you're into lately?
Springtime baking. Springtime baking.
Springtime baking. Tell me more. Tell me more.
So last week for Easter, so my mom was cleaning her house. This is relevant, I promise. My mom was cleaning her house, and she found these. It was really cute. It was this this really old looking like recipe, like 4 recipes printed on like an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and then these like flattened tiny baking boxes. So basically like you would fold them up and then you could bake one of the like 4 recipes on that paper, and it was like some kind of a bread, so like pumpkin bread, zucchini bread, whatever, in those tiny baking boxes, and then just like give them to people, and then, you know, they're like disposable, and also they were like mini loaves. So it was super cute. And so for Easter I ended up like making this like carrot pineapple loaf.
Oh.
Which was fun and festive for the season. And then today, like just now, I made these like lemon blueberry pie bars. I'm excited. They smell really good. I want to eat them.
She showed it to me. Oh my gosh, they look so good. I wish you could share with me through the screen.
I wish I could share with you through the screen too.
I really do.
Especially now that Lent is over.
Yes, I want your bars.
What are you into lately?
Oh my gosh, I'm choking is what
Coughing.
I'm into lately.
That's what.
I feel like every time we do this segment, I just talk about what TV show I'm watching at the moment. Every time. Oh my gosh. So, I've been like binging Crikey, It's the Irwins.
Oh, I love that. You told me this.
Which is, I'm absolutely obsessed, okay? This is Steve Irwin, as people know, who passed away like years ago. This is his family, his wife and his 2 kids. And like them like running their zoo in Australia. And
That's
here's
so
the
cool.
deal. I'm so into this because I'm obsessed with TV shows that would primarily be just described as wholesome.
Yes.
I'm obsessed with like a feel-good show. Like it's almost like the Great British Baking Show where like,
oh, I love Bake Off.
you know, you don't have to like think too hard, but it's like it's like people who love each other and cute animals. I mean, what more is there to like? And it's funny because I'm a super big dog person, but I'm not like an animal person. And after watching this show, I'm kind of like, do I like animals more than I thought I did? Like, am I an animal person?
I feel
so
like that's a
been
show
fun.
that can make anybody love
I know.
animals,
Well, like,
so.
I recently watched a koala had to be put down, and I was crying. Like,
Oh,
literally,
girl,
like,
that's so
sobbing.
sad.
It was horrible, but no, I mean, literally, like, so good. And I also am watching season 2 of Bridgerton.
Oh, saucy.
Yeah, so that is something I'm trying to get through as well. I have so many shows on my long list of things.
Casey
Oh, yeah,
got me-
and This Is Us.
Oh, yeah. Casey got me turned on to My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. And I understand that the
course.
fandom is insane.
Yes.
However, it's such a comfort watch. I didn't even
Yes.
grow up like watching it, but I just, and it you know, it's definitely a kids show, but it's also surprisingly hilarious. And so I love to have it on while I'm like doing my chores, and it makes me laugh. It makes me feel good.
Oh,
so.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I totally got her. Well, it was really funny because, like, when I had COVID, I was like, I need comfort. And I was, like, watching. I think that's how this all started. I was, like, watching some of the episodes. And then Cass was like, I need comfort, too. And then she was like, I guess I'll start My Little Pony. Friendship is Magic. And yeah.
It's great.
It's great.
I highly enjoy it. I feel
What season
like
are
they're
you
my
on?
friends. I think I'm on season 4.
You're really going for it. Oh, my
I really
gosh.
am. I'm in
love
too
it.
deep. I can't stop.
You're in too deep. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you all so much for listening. Please follow us on all the socials. And hey to any new followers. I know we got a few from the TikTok.
Oh, wait, the TikTok. Yeah,
Yes.
Casey's on the tick, as the
tick.
kids say.
They really
and
don't. We just say that.
we just are out of touch.
Yeah.
But and also thank you to everyone who has left Spotify reviews. We have
Yes,
we have forgotten
13.
to thank them. Yeah, thanks guys. We love that. So
Yes.
we have decided to count those in addition, now that those are an option, we count those in addition to our Apple Podcast ratings. So please give us a rating, and we can hear the beloved Casey's amazing and overhyped dog voice. It's actually really good.
If I'm doing the math correctly, I think we have 83 if we combine. So
y'all, we're so close. We're
fairly
17
close.
away.
We're fairly close, and that's scary to me because the pressure is on. Hey, maybe by our 2-year anniversary we could be.
Oh, that would be so well timed.
Who
You
knows,
guys,
but
we got to make this happen, please.
Yes. But thank you for listening, everyone.
We'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye.